Good afternoon, folks. It's your old pal Colby Evans here with another edition of the Arca Racing Podcast presented by Menards. We had an explosive weekend of action with Arca Racing, but not with the main series. They thankfully had an off weekend, which honestly, in my opinion, was much needed as a lot of these teams, sometimes they just need some time at the shop to get their cars ready. Even teams like Venrini and Gibbs can use some time to themselves. But we still had a great weekend of racing with the West Series, which I feel like is a very underrated series in my opinion. The car counts, they kind of differ about the same of what the main series does. The really only difference with that is, unlike kind of the main series, there's really not that one or two cars that pull away from the entire field. It's kind of just everyone all together. And then maybe you got about 3 or 4 cars who just can't keep up. That's why another reason why I feel like the West Series needs to come to a track like Iowa next year, and I will not stop saying that they need to have the East, Main, and West Series merge all for that one race because logistically, for travelness, it's not much farther from each side of the country. It really isn't. Anyway, getting back to Portland, we had an explosive weekend of racing, although let's just say it was not a smooth weekend for a lot of people. Even just practice sessions were very tough on a lot of drivers. Luckily, my friend Luis Torres, who is a great photographer, if any race team out there, any racetrack, if you're looking for a photographer, go contact my friend Luis Torres on Twitter. He is absolutely great. And he got us quite some action shots of both practice and from the qualifying session. And the good news is I always love about these road courses, we get to see the return of the Gen 4 body. Now, they're not steel body cars. They're still fiberglass, but it's the Gen 4 body design. And it's the coolest thing ever seeing these Gen 4 cars run with the Gen 6 body designs and actually having the Gen 4s keep up. Dave Smith running that old Bill McAnally car with the amazing tape job 38 number was running top 5 most of the day until a late issue put him outside the top 10. But it's always fun to watch the West Series because you never know what you're going to get. And I really wish Mav TV would pick up the West Series because they've been very, very entertaining this year. So let's get right into it here. Practice came up. We actually had 18 cars on the entry list for this race, although in reality only about 16 ended up racing. The field was separated by, unshockingly, about 10 seconds. Bobby Hillis Jr., one of the slowest guys in the field, but one of the biggest hearts and great underdog, he was in a little bit of a bind. And a lot of his crew was unfortunately out to COVID. So if you are a crew member of Bobby Hillis, shout out for a speedy recovery to all of you guys. Fortunately, it left Bobby with little or no crew. And at a road course, you need a lot of crew. Luckily, though, it was actually seen that during the race, Charles Craw mentioned on the broadcast, Bridget Burgess' team, Sarah Burgess, her mom was seen helping fuel the 27 car. So it looks like a lot of the Burgess racing team came over to help the Hillis racing team, which really shows, in my opinion, that Arca, it just has the family team vibe that I feel like outside of the truck series and maybe a little bit in the Xfinity series, we don't really see it that much in NASCAR. But in Arca, everyone is a family. Most of the time. Sometimes it can get a little rusty, but most of the time, Arca is a family, and that's why, again, I support this series so much. The noted entry of the weekend that unfortunately didn't get to do much was the 77 PPG Racing of Caleb Costner. They did have a Gen 4 car here, which, again, just looks amazing. It was a beautiful car, beautiful paint scheme. And he wasn't all that bad in practice. He qualified 15th. He was about 7 seconds off, but for what the PPG Racing team can bring to the track, really not that bad. Unfortunately, from what my friend Luis said, despite them getting I believe it was a transmission changed or engine, they never showed up for qualifying and did not start the race at all. So that sucks because Obviously, with these 18-car fields, you want to have as many cars as you can start the race. And unfortunately, sometimes for some people, luck is just not on their side. What was kind of shocking to me was I finally feel like I got this name down correctly. PJ Pedroncelli. I keep botching that name, but I'm trying my best to get it pronounced right. Paul Pedroncelli in the 31 has kind of done full races and starting parks this season. I figured that he was just going to start and park this race, collect the $1,100, and get to the next one because I don't believe this was a road course car. Looking at the pictures, I think this was the same car they used at one of the short track races this year. And judging by his lap times, number one, I think he was only in fourth gear. And number two, I don't think this car was really set up for this race that good. But I do believe that he only ran the race in fourth gear. I could be wrong, but judging by his lap times and kind of how the turn one goes with fourth gear, his lap times actually merged up to what it would actually run like. But like I said, Bobby Hillis, who did show up, was 17th. But yeah, like I said, about the top five was separated by a second. And let's just get into fifth place, Todd Souza. Before we get into the race, let's get into Todd Souza, who at one point was leading the standings this year. And honestly, like me and a lot of other Arca fans, really wanted him to pull off the miracle, winning the championship ahead of McAnally and Sunrise Racing. And despite qualifying fifth and being pretty good on the road courses, if you watched the broadcast, you guys saw it. Not one, not two, but I think 3 or 4 times they tried to get that poor 13 car started. And he just would not run. It would not run. I tweeted to last car, Brockbeard, I think twice, it's alive, it's alive. It's not. It died so many times. It was actually getting laughable by about the last time. I felt so bad for Todd. They kept trying, never give up attitude. Even 33 laps down, they wanted to get that race going. And the car just would not respond. And unfortunately, after the last time, I'm not sure if Arca parked him or they just gave up. But officially, he was only credited with 3 laps. Oh, it was sad, but it was also kind of funny at the same time. Going into qualifying results here. My computer will get going. Jake Drew, the whole weekend. Sunrise Ford Racing dominated this weekend. Another update, Dean Thompson was a merger team with Sunrise Ford. We have not seen him back yet, actually, which kind of shocks me. I wonder if he's still doing his COVID treatments. I hope he's getting better, and I hope we see him return at the next West race. But yeah, shout out to Dean Thompson. Hope he gets better. But Jake Drew absolutely demolished the field this weekend. Should have won. We'll get to that in a second. But Jake Drew should have pretty much won everything this weekend. He was over a second faster in qualifying. And I really think the reason why was turn 1. Watching the race, Drew would always hit turn 1 perfectly every single time. I really think going into turn 1 and then launching off of 2 under the long stretch, I think that's really where he was beating everyone because he was just so fast. So fast. And only 15, like I said, 15 of our 18 cars took a time. We had some guys who opted not to go. And then, of course, like I said, we had the 77 who did not start the race, unfortunately. Other notables in the field, our points leader, Jesse Love, he's had some struggles on the road courses in his Arca career. Did okay, about 7th, but it's really kind of the first time this season we've seen that 16 car vulnerable and may not actually dominate a race, which was kind of happy to see in some ways as well. We actually had some returns. We had Tim Spurgeon, and Rod Nealand and Stafford Smith all making their returns to the series after some time away. So it was good to see some old faces come back. Our Gen 4 cars in this race were the 7 of Takuma Koga, the 77 of Caleb Costner, the 54 of Joey East, and the 38 of Dave Smith, I believe, were the Gen 4 cars in this race. If I missed one, sorry, but I believe if I'm correct by that of what I saw from Luis's pictures. Come race time, unfortunately, the race really could never get going because the 13 kept bringing up the dang yellow. I mean, that's what I was saying before. The 13 prevented this race from really getting going. We didn't really have a turn 1 skirmish. We had some beating and banging, but everyone kind of made it through kind of cleanly. I don't think anyone got spun around. They kind of just focused on the leaders. I don't believe anyone got spun around in turn 1. And yeah, they got spread out, but not by much. I mean, yes, for a 15-car field on a big road course, they really didn't get spread out all that much. Taylor Gray actually ended up leading lap 1, surprisingly, but Jake Drew quickly took the lead back. Jake Drew versus Taylor Gray was becoming quite the rivalry throughout this whole race, and we'll get to more of that in a second because it led to something, a whole series of events that really pissed off a lot of people. So yeah, 13 stopped on track. We had another debris caution. We had another caution for the 13. The race just for some reason could not get going. And then mercifully, we had a 10-lap go into the break. Thank Christ. Then we had the big yellow. Now, we still had 16 cars on the track at this time. And after the break, no, it was actually just before the break. I got it wrong. It was just before the break. This is where the big rivalry of the race started. Taylor Gray had went to the outside of Jake Drew. And I believe who was leading the race this time, I actually believe it was Cole Moore, I think, leading this part. I'm not quite sure who was in the lead. All I know is that the 17 kind of knocked the 9 right into the 7. A lot of people blame Takuma for this accident when really he was just had nowhere to go. Takuma was actually having one of his best runs of the season. And then all of a sudden, the 17 just kind of careens into the 9, and the 7 nowhere to go, climbs up, because with the old bumpers, it's a lot easier to climb cars. And then there's the side of the 7 car hanging off the bumper, the right rear bumper of the 9 car, and then just flop right to the ground. Both cars continued on, luckily. But obviously that was setting the tension for what would come in the end of the race with Jake Drew and Taylor Gray. But luckily, like I said, both cars limped it home to the break. And when you really looked at the damage, they did a close-up during the break. Jake Drew's car, outside of body damage, really was not hurt at all. And honestly, I was kind of shocked at how bad they did repairing the car, because tape was flying everywhere. Body panels were flying everywhere. I thought for sure they would just break out the entire dang roll of duct tape, handyman secret weapon, and just tape that sucker on like shreds, but it was still flopping and flying all over the place. Luckily for Jake, there was only 15 cars on the lead lap. And within, I think, 10 laps, Jake came back and easily took the lead from Taylor Gray, who had his own issues in the race as well. Taylor had actually, just after the break, on the very first lap after the break, spun in the very first turn and could not get it going. He had stalled it. The funny part was that then the field came around to lap him. A lot of people were confused on the broadcast is, why did Taylor get a free go-around? Well, I can actually understand it. from this point, apparently from what the commentator said, it took the truck so long to get there to get him push started that Arca felt like they probably would have got him started before the field had come by to lap him. So theoretically, they're just like, okay, go on by and we'll give you back your lap, which people can say is fair or it's crap. I'm kind of in between because I understand from both sides where that would be coming from. But obviously, having the 9 and the 17 back there kind of led to something pretty funny in a second. And then it comes to the last restart. I'll just say this. Outside of the leaders, the back of the field from about 5th to about 12th were beating the crap out of each other. Bridget Burgess, she may be 18, 19 years old. This girl can go. She was and this is a car that's run ovals. They set this car up to run road courses. She was a beast out there. She was beating and banging with the boys like she was a professional out there. It was amazing to see. And then unfortunately, her engine let go by the end of the race, and we really didn't get to see her get the finish she deserved. And then Takuma Koga, his Gen 4 car is just absolutely destroyed, and he's out there running 8th. And then we got the other guys who out there, Eric Nascimento, he's got a destroyed right front. He's out there running 2nd. PJ Pedroncilli is running 3rd. I mean, everyone you want to see have a good day is having a good day. And but then the restart comes that kind of changed the whole game. The 9 had gotten revenge. The 9 had gotten revenge on the 17 basically by turning him, like I said before. Well, now we had a run of, after the 17 had gotten spun again, we had a 6-lap green flag run. And I had said to myself, if that 17 of Taylor can get up there, all hell is about to break loose for that win. And sure enough, I believe it was coming to the white flag almost. Unfortunately, the 27 of Bobby Hill is spun, and in her own fluid from her engine dying, Bridget also spun as well, and it brought out the caution. And I knew with the 17 in 5th place, I'm like, he'll be on the inside row. He's gonna full send it into 1. And here came the deciding factor of the race, which really pissed me off, but I saw it coming. Everyone saw it coming. 17, you could see him lay back. He got a heck of a launch, and so did the 9. The 9 got a great launch too. But you saw the 17 peak out by the 99, and you see it clear as day. Even on the broadcast coming to turn 1, you see the 9's rear end lift up, and there is no way, you already know, there's no way he is making the corner. And he didn't. Jake Drew had no chance of making turn 1. So neither him or the 4 of Eric Nascimento, none of those guys made turn 1. Taylor was the first one to make turn 1. And they never called the penalty even after Jake had taken the checkered flag. But then all of a sudden they say, oh, folks, we're reviewing it. And it was a sad sight. This young Jake Drew just sitting on the finish line waiting and waiting and waiting. And then the call finally comes. The 9 and the 4 have been penalized, along with actually the 68 as well was also penalized for cutting the corner as well. They were all penalized as well, and they were unfortunately sent to the back of the field. I believe in total, the 9, 4, 99, and 68 were all penalized for cutting the corner, so that put everyone up about 4 positions. And unfortunately, everyone's favorite Arca driver, Taylor Gray, got his first career win. Although I don't believe that makes him the youngest winner. Definitely close, but needless to say, a lot of people, when they posted the finish online, were not happy. It was clear as day. I understand. Rules are rules. But when it's clear as day that the 17 gave the 9 no chance to make turn 1, you gotta think. Why would you give the 17 the win anyway then? They showed 2 replays the camera coming towards turn 1. You could see the 17's bumper get lifted up. And then in another camera angle that was in turn 1, you could see the 9 wheel hopping. No way the 9 could make turn 1. I understand he got to a big lead, but it was not his fault he missed the corner. But unfortunately, rules are rules. I understand it. It was the saddest sight seeing Jake Drew, who was still sitting at the finish line, and seeing the 17 doing burnouts right past him. To me, that is the saddest thing ever. I felt so bad for Jake Drew and Sunrise Racing in that moment. With all due respect, I think the 17 was also rubbing it in his face. They had all the team guys on the wall rubbing it in the poor kid's face. But hey, that's racing, you know. You got to make fun of the competition sometimes. It happens all the time. I wasn't really happy about it, but on the bright side, it did upgrade PJ Pedroncelli up to second. So at least that was the good part. And Takuma Koga and the beat to crap Gen 4 got a top 5 finish. I'm like, you know what? I hate it for Jake Drew, but Takuma Koga getting a top 5 finish, I'll take it. I'll take it. Especially in a beaten-up race car. Points leader Jesse Love, who just kind of rode around the whole race, was always up there to contend for the win, but never really kind of contended for the win. He was just kind of about 4th, 5th place all day. Settled into 3rd. Joey East, not for David Gilliland, for his West team, Naki Motorsports, finished 4th. Takuma 5th. Tim Spurgeon, who really was benefited with the 4 cars losing their positions, he went all the way from 10th to 6th. Sunrise Ford teammate to Jake Drew, Trevor Huddleston, finished 7th. Stafford Smith, in a return to the K&N Series, very slow all weekend, but due to the other people's problems, finished 8th. And this one made me the happiest of all. Paul Pedroncelli, over almost 5 to 6 seconds, even at sometimes 8 seconds a lap slower than these guys. But because of all the cautions came out, he never lost a lap. He never lost a lap. And despite taking care of his car, not 1 ounce of damage, probably running 4th gear the entire race, got a top 10 finish. So at least the good thing that came out of this race was, although the officials, in my opinion, made a bad call, Pedroncelli Motorsports got 2 cars in the top 10. For me, that is a win, and that is the positivity that can really come out of this weekend. But Dave Smith in the old McAnally car, what happened to him? For some reason, he went a lap down. And appears that he actually had a fuel pump issue, which was really sad because that guy had an easy 5th place finish coming. Had an easy 5th place finish coming. Bobby Hillis Jr., unfortunately, was not able to take advantage of the 4 guys losing their positions as he was a lap down and unfortunately just had to settle for 15th. And although it does list Bridget running at the end of the race, I can't confirm whether Bridget was running the end of the race, but Racing Reference does have her running the entire race 7 laps down. Needless to say, it was a very entertaining race. And although it's a long, long haul, I hope we see more of Portland. But I definitely agree with what a lot of people have said. Maybe for the first lap, we should just go straight and not go into turn one. Because as you saw in the IndyCar race the next day, big pileup. It's just, you're asking for trouble. You're asking for trouble, especially if you ever bring the Xfinity Series or the Truck Series there, or bring the Truck Series back. You're kind of asking for trouble. You got a bunch of rookies out there who really don't know what they're doing. But yeah, for a lot of the low-budget guys, it was a great day. For a lot of the big-budgeted guys, really wasn't the best day. And we got a winner who, like I said, everyone just loves. And from what one of my people who's watching is saying, Taylor actually did win a West race last year. That is correct. So everyone's favorite guy now has about 2 wins. Hopefully he can actually improve himself this weekend at Bristol and not destroy the field. Probably will. Anyway, the West standings coming out of this. Pull them up real quick on the internet. Jesse Love, I mean, you could say, based on what the field says, pretty much has the championship locked up. He's got a 19-point lead over Jake Drew, which Jake would have closed on, but unfortunately, due to the penalty, got them even farther back. But it's still a very close race. Second to sixth is only separated by 10 points. First to sixth is 29 points. Fortunately, with car counts that are about 16 to 18 cars, it's kind of hard to lose that many points and gain that many points at the same time. But on the bright side, though, our boy and girl Bridget and Bobby are 9th and 10th in points. So at least for Bobby, he's in the top 10 in points for the second year in a row. As for the West Series, I don't remember their next race. Get up on the schedule real quick. You guys heard that? That was my mom. She's home from work.
Chuck Welch going to bring that pace car down onto pit road.
That was ArcaRacing.com showing the finish of the race. This is live TV, folks. yeah, it's the bull ring, the good old bull ring at Las Vegas is the next race for the West Series. And they are closing in on their end of the schedule, whereas the East races having their end this weekend at Bristol. We have just 3 races left. But with the big field of cars that is expected at the Phoenix race, there is still a chance that Jesse Love could lose this championship. And it would be great to see Sunrise Ford get a championship again, especially in the West Series. So that was kind of all the action for the West Series. And we move on to Bristol. Big, bad Bristol. With one of the shocking things of the whole weekend here. We had 32 cars on this entry list. An amazing field of cars. Absolutely amazing field. We have teams like Andy Hillenberg who are bringing 5 cars. We've got the E Series there with their championship being decided. GMS is bringing 2 cars. It is a huge, badass field of cars. It is tomorrow night. Everyone needs to watch this race. It is either going to be the greatest or worst crap show ever. That's all I can say. I love this series so much. I cannot wait for this race. I genuinely hope we see a shocking winner. We have 2 guys driving for Andy Hillenberg that I could very well see being contenders for this race. Jade Buford and Mason Mingus. Mason has been a powerhouse, almost winning at Nashville earlier this year. So I really hope Mason does good. And as for starting parks for this race, I don't see many of them. I see maybe just Don Thompson and the 06 for Wayne and the 48 of Brad. Now, I wouldn't say Brad wants to park this race because Bristol's not the hardest track on tires, especially with the tire that General brings. But with all the attrition all the rookies and 31 other cars, Brad really wouldn't want to take the risk. So I could very well see Brad running 30, 40 laps and then kind of pulling in, calling it a day. Whereas for the 06, I could see that car running just like 3 or 4 laps because they will catch him so quickly. And I just fear of what could happen to that poor old Chevrolet. We also have the return of Greg Van Alst and the RSS team. And like I said, the return of Gallagher after not seeing them for a couple of races. They have 2 cars, both for their drivers, Daniel Dye and Jack Wood. Now, along with this being a main race, this is also an East race. This is the last East race of the season. There are still a lot of rumors going around that the East Series may be merging with the main series next year. Not confirmed yet, but in my opinion, would be a good move, as having only 5 standalone races for East and seeing the car counts barely above 15 or barely above 10 at sometimes really shows that the series should just be merged, in my opinion. Don't really know the threat of a 13-car race. We only have 6 guys who have ran the whole season. It's not really the best look, but again, hoping for better changes for 2022, that is for sure. The championship, in my opinion, is all but decided. It is only a 2-horse race, actually. Not between Mason Diaz. He had a bad day at Milwaukee and is out of the title hunt. It is either going to be Daniel Dye or Sammy Smith. Now, we have 32 cars here, and the point lead is separated by 24. So that would simply mean that Sammy Smith has to pretty much run better than about 23rd to clinch the championship, regardless of what the 21 does. Although, if we saw from Iowa, Sammy choked that race, and I hope he doesn't do it here. Because, JGR has invested a lot of money this season into that 18 or 81 car in this situation, and you don't want to see them lose they don't want to see them lose the championship, especially after putting all that money in. Personally, I love Daniel, but I don't think he's going to go up there and win. I think he'll easily be top 5, might even be second place, but I still hold almighty Ty Gibbs as my pick for tomorrow night's race at Bristol. Like I said, great field of cars. I only see maybe 1 or 2 starting parks, so you got all these cars out there, ARCA-based, 30. Guarantee you guys watch this. It's going to be a heck of a race. Not much else is really changing in the points. Like I said, Heim is only 16 points behind, but this big field this weekend is really their opportunity. If Heim does not gain anything on Gibbs, I think that championship pretty much belongs to Ty after this, because Salem, that is a tie track, and especially Kansas is where Toyota really flies. And we saw from the May race that Ty absolutely ran away with it, leading every lap. 3rd and 4th is still Heim and is still Moffitt and Sanchez, despite missing 2 races. Brad's still sitting pretty in 5th. D.L. Wilson has jumped up to 6th in points. Drew Dollar has dropped down to 7th. Taylor Gray's in 8th. Kyle Sieg is in 9th. And Jesse Love is in 10th place in the points. Not much will pretty much change for the rest of the season. That will probably be your top 10. But we'll definitely check again on next week's show and see how it's going to be changed. Like I said, though, Fast Track bringing 5 cars. They will have Jade Buford, Xfinity driver. This, I believe, is the 3rd time this season that we have seen Jade drive for Andy Hillenberg. Because of the lack of practice and qualifying and the fact that there was a dirt race this year, Jade has never been at Bristol. And running the Arca race is a great opportunity for him to get some extra laps. As for Mason Mingus, we saw him almost win Nashville. He is a powerhouse, guarantee you, and he's giving his best car possible to Mason Mingus, so that way he can possibly have a shot at a top 10, maybe even a top 5 finish. And a shocking number, though, The 44 is owned by John Ferrier. So in a combination effort with John Ferrier, the 44 will be run under Stephanie Moyer. Good to see her back after her little kerfuffle with Corey Heim back at Milwaukee, assuming she'll be running the same white and kind of greenish car that she usually runs. And then, of course, you got the 01, which will feature the return of Richard Garvey, who we have not seen, I believe, since Nashville or Pensacola. I don't know, one of those races. And, of course, D.L. Wilson probably driving his own personal Chevrolet. We have the return of the 55 for Venerini. They will have 4 cars in this race. 55 will be run under Parker Chase. Andy Jankowiak is back. Best last name ever. And back in his Ford. Chuck Buchanan Jr. after their hard crash at New Smyrna Speedway earlier this season. They've finally gotten their Ford repaired, and they're back and ready to go. Hopefully they don't start and park, but with the lack of laps, I could see it happening. But obviously I want as many cars as possible to run the whole distance. One of the sadder stories is Justin Carroll. If you guys saw on his Facebook, they had plans to run truck races this season. Unfortunately, once again, the top 40 rule has kicked another team to the curb. They got the equipment ready. The trucks are ready to go. They're just sitting in the shop. Unfortunately, nothing they can do about it. They were going to file an entry, but they realized they would have been 42nd, would not have made the show. So they unfortunately had to withdraw. But they will be back running this race, and I hope to see them at Kansas where they ran back in the spring. Connor Jones is back for the first time since Iowa. Hopefully his next race can last more than 20 laps after being taken out. Zachary Tinkle will run the 27 again. I believe this race was supposed to be run by Tim, and unfortunately we all know still what happened to Tim. Shout out to David Gilliland Racing. They held up their end of the deal. David Gilliland Racing provided them with a race car from their Toyota days. I believe it was actually the car that Decker ran like top 10 at Pocono in 2019. I think that's where they said that car debuted. But shout out to DGR for actually living up their end of the deal and on Tim's birthday, gifting Richmond Club Motorsports a car that should really improve their super speedway program. In other news, though, Alex Clubb is trying to field his own entry for the finale at Kansas in his familiar number 03. So there will be 2 cars for that team, which is good to see. Actually, no, I believe, I'm going to correct myself on that. They will be running their own separate organizations for that race. I believe that is correct. As I said before, the guy who infamously won last Sunday's race, Taylor Gray, will be in this one. Hopefully he doesn't wreck anyone, but that's probably going to happen. Drew Dollar is back. He'll be definitely aggressive again. Raja Karuth is back. It was actually announced he will be running this race and I believe the last 2 of the season as well at Salem and Kansas. So it'll be great to see Raj at the last 2 races, even though they're not East ones. But going down the entry list, I mean, we got a very, very solid field of cars here, folks. Again, please tune into this race because I think, honestly, this is going to be one of the top 2 races of the weekend. Of the 4 that are happening, I'm putting this in the top 2. I genuinely think this is actually going to be entertaining. This is going to be amazingly funny entertainment. But as for the East Championship, like I said, guys, Sammy's pretty much got it locked up. Unless he chokes like he did at Iowa this year, he's going to kind of run away with it. Still great to see Daniel Dye get second in the championship. But the battle to finish in other positions, especially with 32 cars, with the full-time guys, 2nd to 6th, is only separated by 21 points. So that battle to get in the top 5 and battle to get into that top 5 is really close. And, a lot of guys, it pays a lot better to finish in the top 5 than, say, outside of it. As for the Arca main point standings, yes, only 5 guys have really run the majority of the season. The bottom half of the top 10 in points is kind of made up of the guys who have run about a little over half the season. But we've come to expect that. It's still great to see, though, that performance matters. Jesse Love has only run 8 races this season, but because of his performance, he's 10th in points. So quite impressive, that's for sure. But like I said, guys, it is tomorrow, Thursday. I believe it's around 6:30 p.m. I think it's on FS1. Check it out. I will be live tweeting the race at my account at Start and Park Car. And you can follow Brad Smith, who I'll be cheering for, at Driver Brad Smith. And also donate to Brad's Tire Fund. We're at $580, folks. We're over a quarter of the way there. Again, if everyone who's listening could just donate $1, we would make it there. So donate now. Get your name on the 48 car. I will tweet it. I will tweet out everyone who donates. Donate now. It would mean a lot to me. It would mean a lot to an underdog who hasn't raced on stickers in a long, long time. But anyway, folks, this has been the Arca Racing Podcast presented by yours truly, Colby Evans. I hope you guys have the great rest of your day, and we'll see y'all next week. Bye.